Ted, for that lovely introduction. And thank you to one of my favorite communities of practice, ICF New England. Thank you especially to the ICF New England Board. And thanks to all of you for being here tonight. I was asked to talk about how coaching has given me a venue to do my work and how it's inspired me. And I thought I'd start by talking about how I actually got into coaching. My background is in corporate human resources. And in 1987, when I was on maternity leave, I had a boss who said to me, you know, I'm not sure you can work part-time and be a serious career woman, so I think you need to choose. And that year was the year I left corporate America and started my own management consulting firm. And that was way before coaching started, and our focus was leadership development in corporations, and our focus was corporate training and consulting. And then, and still now today, we do work in finance and insurance companies and healthcare and telecom and technology. And it's a great business and has been for over 20 years. And in the early 1990s, I added coaching to my company services. And like many of us, it was kind of a fluke. So we all have our story about how, whoops, I just hit something. Okay, so you've already seen me close that. As to how coaching started for me. So I was in a self-expression and leadership course in a place called Landmark Education. Anybody been to Landmark Education? A few of you. Which is, for those of you who don't know, it's a training company. They do workshops and programs in the personal transformation field. And so I was in this great course where you were required to have a project to manifest in the world. You know how that works, right? Manifesting, coaching. So each of us took turns standing up and talking about what our project was. So this one guy stood up and said, I have a dream to start an energy conservation lighting company for nonprofits and for schools. And I actually have figured out a way, I'm an engineer, where I can actually save them money on their energy bill. And after that class, during break, I went up to him and I said, I love your vision. And if I can help in any way, here's what I do for a living. So I never heard from Kevin Murray again. 2 years later, my phone rang and he said, okay, I'm ready. I said, what are you ready for? He said, well, we have 25 employees and we're making $3.5 million and I'd like to hire you to be my coach. I went, great! And I'd like to hire you for an entire year. I went, wow, great! And I'd like all 25 of my employees coached. So I hung up the phone and I turned to my husband, Chris, and I said, oh my God, if this is that easy, I ought to be paying attention to this coaching thing. And that's how I started adding coaching to my business. Well, you know how it is when you're a consultant, you never say no. So I hung up the phone after saying yes, and I turned to Chris and went, oh my God, now what do I do? He said coaching, I heard consulting. And I thought, you know, I really ought to know what this coaching thing is. So I called a colleague and I said, Jeff, do you know anything about this coaching thing? He said, actually, I've just hired a coach to work with me, and she's pretty good. And I thought, well, maybe I should hire a coach, and then I could be a better coach, and then I could learn what this coaching thing is. So have you all figured it out yet? My first coach was Cheryl Richardson. And then I went on to get coach certified through the Newfield Network, which is a wonderful training organization to get coach training. What coaching has taught me is what matters most to me is connecting people to their sparkle and igniting them into their next bold move and doing it in a way that serves them and their organizations. What it's taught me, like for many of us, you don't get to be a coach unless you do your own work, right? So it's been a hell of a ride of self-examination and personal journey and transformation and self-development and self-expression, like for all of us. It really has changed my work and changed my life. I was the first president of ICF New England, but I wasn't the one who started us. Our chapter started because of a dear friend of mine, Nancy Levy, who was not able to be here tonight. Nancy had the vision, she created the path, she developed relationships all over the country to help chapters start. She was an early pioneer. It was an amazing time in our chapter. It was so much fun, and she really was an amazing woman. And she called me one day and she said to me, I'd like to get a group of people together to talk about coaching. Chrissy, you were there, weren't you? Yeah. And we met at Wellesley College. And she said, I thought you might be interested in this. So I went and I listened. And what was curious to me is that the table was surrounded with people who are personal coaches. And I felt like a fish out of water. And I thought, you know, this is not my tribe, but there's something here. And I think that this coaching thing has something, possibilities for corporations and for leaders in corporations. And so I'm going to stay because I want us to have a voice. So we didn't do it alone. You know, you never do anything alone. It's all about community. And so many of you were trailblazers with us in the early days of ICF New England. So if you were here with us in the very early days, would you stand, please, so we can acknowledge you? So wonderful to have you all here and see those old familiar faces. You know, I was president for 5 years. Kate Carlton and I were talking about this sitting at dinner. You know, in those days, you got to be president for as long as you wanted. Nobody else wanted the job. And then on the board for a couple of other years, and then you turned to your friends and said, you would like to be president next, wouldn't you? And so we, you know, the early trailblazers, we didn't do that alone either. So I'd like to introduce the board members when I was president who were able to be here tonight. So Steve Lashansky, will you stand? Ann Raring, Ingrid Wolfson, and Kate Carlton. You know, one of the great things about the coaching field is you get to work with awesome people and then they get to be your best friends. So community is so important to me, and connection and support. So supporting each other through all the years that we grew this organization. And like anyone else, the support and love from home is most important of all. So I'd like to thank my hubby, Chris, love of my life, who's here tonight, who is always standing behind me saying, you can do it, honey. Go for it. I'm here to support you. And I always feel like I have a little mastermind resource at home, just being married to Chris. I want to end by saying how much I love ICF. Sounds a little like Brian Piccolo. I love Brian Piccolo. I really love ICF. I love what it's created for us. I love the stand that it took, taking what I think is really just good, solid communication skills and turned it into a profession where we get to do our work, where we get to pay our bills and support our families. I am overwhelmed with amazement at how ICF created a profession and a community of people who adore the work that they do and change the world with our own individual touches. For those of you who have not taken a place standing at the helm of our chapter, I invite you to do so. Whether you're on a committee or whether you choose to be on the board, that our organization, you know, is run by us. And I'm not so interested in making a call to action for you so that you get to pay back the place that gave you what you've got, what we all have. But I'd actually like to see you be part of this to help create our future. What's ahead for us is just amazing, and I'm excited to see it. And the only way we get to move into the future is that we raise our hands and volunteer. So I'd like to thank you all for this wonderful honor that has really touched my heart in so many ways and given me an opportunity to be with so many old friends and new friends to honor and celebrate ICF New England. Thank you.